Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome again to Receiving Noor Ramadan Quran Feast. We are excited to have our second session today with sisters Seyma and Hatice Beyza. Before I turn it over to them, I wanted to give you a little bio about them. So starting with Hatice Beyza, she holds a degree in film, TV, and interactive media with secondary specializations in Islamic studies and English from Brandeis University. She is currently working as a creative director at an animation studio. She has produced a wide range of content from explainer videos to animated series for globally known brands. She's interested in storytelling that integrates and addresses existential concerns from a belief perspective. Co-presenting with Hatice Beyza is Dr. Seyma Inam. Seyma was born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey. She moved to the United States in 2009. As an undergraduate, she did her major in psychology and she minored in social work and religion. Seyma holds a PhD in psychology and is currently an assistant professor of psychology in the state of Pennsylvania. She's married and has an adorable, if I may add, daughter. She loves reading books, camping, hiking, and baking. Through all things she's trying to do in life, Seyma seeks to understand the meaning of life and to read the hidden messages and wisdom embedded in Allah's creation, inshallah. So without further delay, we turn to them to share their Quranic reflections. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope inshallah everyone is doing well. Inshallah, I would like to begin with a dua. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Inshallah, so today we will be presenting together with Sister Seyma on our topic, our presentation, responding to dualism in the face of calamities. And what we'd like to present here is essentially what we found relevant in our experiences. It's not meant to be like a fully comprehensive presentation, but rather something that was very relevant to us and what we found helpful for ourselves. And we'd also like to just open up the definition of what we mean by dualism. So I guess the official perhaps definition can be sort of this separation between mind and body as being, or them being kind of like separate entities. But what we mean by this is kind of a reaction to events that happen to us in a way where we kind of see them as black and white. And perhaps we may find that we want to cut off our connection with the world and kind of focus on the hereafter as if those two things are disconnected. Like I can't focus on one, I just want to focus on one because I find that the events that have happened kind of make me feel cold and distant from the world because of how traumatic or big that they may be for me. So kind of this sort of a response that I might find within myself in the face of a calamity. In this presentation, we will also be looking at why we're looking at this topic to begin with, how it's relevant, what is at stake for us. And with the help of guidance, inshallah, we will look at how to respond to the state of being that we find ourselves in. And in this discussion, we'll also be highlighting, what it means to actually be harmed by a calamity. And inshallah, wrap up by, what it means to go back and kind of rebalance our lives again after such an event has taken place. So, on a day-to-day basis, when I say we, I mean I just find myself living my life. I have a certain set of expectations, goals, plans for each day, and I expect each day to go in a certain way. And, little inconveniences may happen, but then sometimes, every now and then, not on a day-to-day basis, but I come more on the rarity end of things. I come face to face with an event that shakes me, and not only does it not meet my expectation, but it kind of forces me to question like what is normal, the sense of normalcy that I find within myself, and because of this reason, then I have to pause. After kind of living the shock of the event, then I pause, and it invites me to realign myself. And this is what we'll be focusing on, inshallah. So, for example, with the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, which literally and figuratively shook many people, or even the floods or the typhoons that have been happening, again, recently. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a natural disaster, but things that we consider outside the norm. So when it comes to these things, I'd like to begin with a question in the form of a scenario, as it says here, and inshallah, ask Sister Seyma this: when facing calamities like natural disasters, or a death of a beloved one, any major injury or sickness, how do we find ourselves initially reacting to these events?
Yes, exactly. And also why do we have a tendency to react in this way? This is a kind of the second question I find myself asking. For instance, initially, based on my personal experience, I find myself in the state of dualism. And whenever I feel shaken by like earthquake, any kind of natural disaster, or minor or major issues happen to my life, which is really affecting my life personally directly, at that moment, what I find is I just don't want to do whatever I am doing in my daily life. I just want to quit my daily routine. This is my first reaction I find myself. The second question is why and how can I really work with that? And then the answer is very unclear to me at that moment.
Thank you. So, inshallah, from this point on, in the face of such events, I find that I rarely know how to react to the sort of feelings that come to me, despite it being such a significant event and instance in my life. So instead, by pausing, I realize that this is indeed a place that requires guidance and mindfulness for me as I navigate this new space for myself. So inshallah, our intention here is to see what guidance has to offer us so that I can say, yes, indeed, there's something here that I am in need of, that I can be guided with, that I find helpful, and inshallah benefit from it.
Okay, so now, so we would like to discuss a few verses with you guys. The first ayah is Surah Al-Zalzala. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها. The very roughly meaning, when the earth quakes with her mighty quaking, and when the earth yields up her burdens, and man cries out, what has happened to her? So here the quake, what is the really main point and Hatice Beyza and I want to make on this slide? First of all, so inevitably that I am shaken by the earthquake or any kind of calamity we may have in our personal life. Saying what is really going on is a very necessary and natural response. So which is kind of very interesting. We all as a human being find ourselves what's happening. So my daily routine has been ruined by this recent calamity, the earthquake again, the flood, and other examples you can think of. And the Quran, the guidance of humans, is telling me the similar, almost the same thing. I was like, oh, so the owner of my feeling is letting me the same thing in this example. And then I ask a question to myself. I think this is a very necessary and natural response. I need to take action as a first place. Because something shakes me, is it necessarily bad or good for me? Like in that initial shaking itself, we feel like this is very negative. It has a negative connotation. It just doesn't feel right. So why do I perceive something as bad versus good? The second question I ask myself, that I may have a problem with my perception, and why should I make a very immediate jump in conclusion? This is just bad. I just don't like it. So in my mind, do I see anything that interrupts my daily life as bad, and things that allow for my continuity of expectation as good? Because I love being control in my life. I enjoy what's gonna happen to my life next hour, next day, next week, and so on. So now it looks like this is a part of my life, and it also get affected by other the issues in my life. What purpose does the shaking meet? So calamities as ways of unburdening of the earth, as burden being something that was never meant to be permanent nor a part of the original set of responsibilities. And also we know calamities itself is not always bad, but the way how I respond back to this calamity can really ruin my psychology, my physiology, my whole life in different levels. So like the earth, do I find any unburdening in the calamity? Or what is it that is being shaken here? Because I know the same calamity, same earthquake can not have the similar impacts or outcomes. So what is the text here in the Surah Al-Zalzala inviting me to re-examine? So the initial thought I have after reading this Quran in a state of, I am in need, I'm just hopeless, I'm powerless, I just don't know what to do with this feeling. And then I feel like after reading this surah, the surah is inviting me as if stay with the feeling. Feeling is very important. You need to welcome your feelings. These are not randomly sent to you. They are kind of an employee of my creator. And if they are sent to me purposely, it's with a specific degree, it has to serve some sort of meaning.
And, in conjunction with the verses we just read, these verses from Surah Al-Qari'ah, Al-Qari'ah, Mal-Qari'ah, wa ma adraka mal-Qari'ah. Oh, the sudden calamity, how awesome the sudden calamity, and what could make you conceive what that sudden calamity will be. What we found interesting was that these verses draw my attention to the sudden and unexpected calamity that I find myself in. So I asked myself, what do I do in this situation? What is my very first reaction, and what kind of response or reaction do I find myself in? And in a way, just in that initial, like when I receive the news of something, or maybe when I experience it firsthand, that calamity, I find that I'm usually in a state of shock. It's like I don't actually know what exactly, how exactly I feel. There's a lot of different things. So it's almost just, I find myself being engulfed with the events that have happened. And so here, the first two verses seem to highlight the nature of the suddenness of that calamity. And the Quran is acknowledging, like the previous verses that we just looked at, that indeed I find myself in such a situation, that yes, Hatice Beyza, you find yourself in such a calamity, that my calamity in a way is acknowledged here. And in a way, again, this acknowledgement of the shock, the shaking, the shock that I experience is necessary. It's a prerequisite in a way for me to undergo a new sort of training that is being presented to me here. And once I get over that initial shock of that event, then I am invited to think about it. And, when it says, what could make you conceive what that sudden calamity will be? What could make me conceive what that sudden calamity is? Which is interesting because I thought I knew what the calamity was. It was an earthquake, and towns and lots of, towns and cities were demolished, buildings collapsed, or floods that ravaged through lands, But instead, the text is saying, it's inviting me to question my conception, my perception that of what that calamity is. In other words, I'm asking myself, is there another guided way of interpreting that which is happening to me? How can such a disaster, or what I conceive as a calamity, can be understood otherwise? And what is the guidance in this for me? So in a way, I think as a starting point, it acknowledges the sort of situation that I find myself in, so that then I can kind of come to a position of reflecting on it.
And I think in this case, like shaking or shocking is very necessary. I really like the idea of prerequisite for a class, because if you want to take an advanced class, you have to have a certain basic classes, right? The similar thing, to be able to really understand the meaning or wisdom of a specific event, the Quran, the guidance of humans, is telling me, the owner of my feelings is telling me, first of all, the feeling of being shocked is very important, because I am not doing a program specific inside me. Okay, now when you see the earthquake, when you see this is what I'm going to respond. I am not making any specific program. I am not coming up with a specific code. Okay, whenever you see this is what's going to happen. Here's your code. You're like a computer. But I find myself in a state of being shocked, and I don't enjoy this feeling. And because why I find myself on the opposite feeling, that I really don't feel comfortable to say with that. But the thing is, because I am in hurry to find my need immediately. But the thing is, if I don't have the first step of my class, I am not going to be able to understand the wisdom of the next step. Because to be able to understand calculus, you have to take a very big step of math class. The same here. Maybe the meaning, whenever I hear the meaning or wisdom of this calamity, for instance, maybe at that moment, I am not gonna be able to interpret or welcome the wisdom that helped me to grow as a human being, as a believer of Quran, as a student of Quran. Okay. Then we have a next passage. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أم حسبت أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله إلا إن نصر الله قريب. The very roughly meaning, but do you think that you could enter paradise without having suffered like those who passed away from you before you? Misfortunes and hardship befell them, and so shaken were they that the apostle and the believers with him would exclaim, "When will God's support come?" Oh, verily, God's support is always near. Now, next feeling I am experiencing right now in my current condition is, where is my God? Where is my Creator? Where is Allah's support? And when will it come? I feel like I'm orphaned. I'm just left with this scary feeling. I just don't know what to do with this feeling. I'm in the middle of desert, just don't know what to do. And I am giving the news from the Quran, his help is always near, always near. My Rabb is near. So within this raw pain, I become most open to help. So it sounds like I am being invited to prepare myself to witness and confirm the support and help of my Creator. So the thing is, everything is like in front of me, but something is missing in my current condition that prevents me from seeing his support and help.
Yeah, I think, we can in a way say that the calamity makes it very, very easy for me to recognize my impotence, my neediness. Because I like, if I could, I would have stopped it. If I could, I would have made sure that no harm in the way that I perceive harm to come would have been prevented. I would have stopped the earthquake. I would have made sure nobody died. But if I just stop there and that's it, like I am just a needy person, I am just an impotent person, and here I am with all of these needs, but how will I meet them? Like I find myself like in this vast universe with lots of potential enemies and lots of things that I need, right? Even a single little virus that is not visible to my eye can, is a threat to my life. Then I find that it can become a very dark sort of a place for me. So it invites me, as it's saying here, the needy position that I find myself in looks to the support or the help that I am also in need of.
So also, like, is it, we talk about this, like we are all a student of the Quran. So now in this position, if I consider myself as a student of the Quran, I find that I am in need. So this is kind of very first important reality. Do I feel like I am in need of this, based on the calamity types that I am experiencing currently, based on the degree of the calamity I'm experiencing? The Quran mentioning in this is good news. Look, I feel like this is super scary, but the Quran says opposite. This is a good news, but to me it's bad news. So I am in need of meaning beyond the calamity. When I ask my question a couple times, why am I so scared of facing this reality? Why am I so scared of knowing that my life is not stable? Even the earth the earth I am walking on, it's not stable. And all the blessing I have in my life, we can make a huge list of these blessings. These are not stable. So this is super scary. The fact that my experience will be respond to looks to a necessary meaning, that existence of the event looks to. The experiencing the meaning here and now is very, very crucial, because I am in need of receiving the meaning of all the things happening surrounded my environment. So it feels like it's a journey. It is not like 2 equals to 2, 2 plus 2 equals to 4. It is not a simple mathematical equation. It's a training for me. So what is the immediate need of the one experiencing the shaking is a fulfillment of the that need. I am asking as a person who get affected by the earthquake, especially in the recent earthquake happened in Turkey. I feel like I just cannot do anything. I'm just sitting in front of my computer, my phone, watching tons of different videos. I feel like, where's God? Like, I feel like hopeless. I really cannot make anyone's heart calm and stay, and I have no guarantee even for my life to keep everything unstable. I am extremely in need. I have zero control over the event that has transpired. So what will happen? What is next? And what's gonna happen to people who lose their life, who lose their all the blessings? And also I find myself, not only particularly for myself, but also all the people who get affected by earthquake, because these are, even I don't know anyone there, but they are my sisters and brothers. I also want them to feel stable in their life. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel peace. And I just want to make sure these all orphans, all the children are going to be in the safe place. So the one who has created the shaking is now letting me know that he is sufficient for me and for my need and for all the people I consider to get help. The Surah Ali Imran is telling us, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فأخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا فقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. And also we have a prophetic the Ayyub alayhi salam dua in the Quran. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأيوب إذ نادى ربه أني مسني الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. The roughly meaning for these two different verses: those who have been warned by other people, behold, a host has gathered against you. So be aware of them. Whereupon this only increased their faith, so that they answered, God is enough for us. God is sufficient for us. And how excellent a guardian is he. And next surah, meaning the Ayyub alayhi salam dua. And when he called upon his Lord, saying, verily, harm has afflicted me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful. And this Quranic and prophetic teaching is presented to me here. And interestingly enough, why I need to see an example from prophets. I am in need of seeing a real example. I need to see a really evidence that someone who got afflicted by a certain calamity, and as a solution of receiving this the guidance from the Quran, they find themselves in eternal peace, not temporary peace, but eternal peace. The one who created me let me know he's enough for me. I was like, am I really sure about it? Am I able to see this help? Something or my channels are blocked? Why can't I see his help? Why can't I say very firmly, God is gonna sufficient for me? I am not lovable in this example. So whenever I feel calamities, earthquake, any kind of other calamities, or when I lose beloved ones, when I fail my exam, or when I have a problem with my friends, I feel like God is punishing me in an initial reaction. One of the other initial reaction is God is punishing me and I am not lovable. My creator doesn't like me anymore. That's why he has been giving me these all horrible events over and over again. I have zero control. I have zero power that can help me to work on it. And how can I really make sure that the creator of my fear, the creator of my grief, will ensure me if I am under his merciful control? After being shaken and touched by calamities, how can I turn back to my new, bright, normal and routine? Interestingly enough, especially for the recent earthquake happened in Turkey, so many Turkish friends of me from Turkey, even including in the US, the people, whenever I call them or text them, they always give me the same response. Even I don't want to cook. Even I don't want to drink a cup of water. I feel guilty. I don't want to do anything. And the next question we ask, is it okay to go to the kitchen and drink a cup of water? Is it okay to have our clothes changed? And now this question is, how can I really turn back to my normal? What is my normal now? I need an evidence, strong evidence, permanent evidence for my mind, for my soul, and my heart.
And this kind of turns us to Prophet alayhi salam's prayer, which also offers us a sort of like prophetic teaching, like a way to approach my perception of the calamity. When he says, and the verse says, when he called upon his Lord, saying, verily harm has afflicted me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful. So in a way, through this, it invites me to approach my perception of the calamity as well as an exploration of divine qualities. And what I mean by that is, I guess if we think about the question of the channels that Seyma was referring to, why am I able to see the mercy here? Why is there some sort of blockage here? How do I open my channel so that I can indeed see this mercy? How can I confirm it? And so in this case, in recognizing his position, that he is needy, Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salam, he takes a position of istighfar, or seeking forgiveness. And in doing so, there's also a reinterpretation of that which is harmful being redefined here. So verily harm has afflicted me. Since he says this in the moment of calamity and then declares right afterwards, you are the most merciful of the merciful, which is interesting because, you know, right in the middle of the calamity, I wouldn't necessarily say this is mercy right in the middle of it. So then the question that I pose is, what is true harm based on how it's being defined? And one take on it that we thought about is that which I declare I know for a fact, and that and if I claim that this event, this calamity is in itself evil, it's terrible, there's no mercy in it for me, and because of this, you know, I find myself in need and I'm left by myself. If I make such a claim, then that claim of just a lack there is a sort of harm to myself. My neediness is being pushed into my face and I'm left being alone there with it. Which then gets in the way of my connection with my creator, gets in the way of me being able to see the mercy. And it manipulates my perception of my reality, so that the mercy in the events can become blurry and difficult to see for myself. So true harm, looking to an event where I declare, based on myself with my limited knowledge, that that event is meaningless, that all there was in this event is just suffering and loss, and there is nothing else. And for, you know, I, whoever I am, within all my limitedness, I declare that this is the declaration, the final say on this event. And, you know, in the following text, which brings us to this, which is an exegesis on Ayub alayhi salam's prayer, which I'd like to see if there's anybody who'd like to just read it. And inshallah, we'd love to, if there are any volunteers, feel free to raise your hand. Just talk about a couple of points from this. And if not, inshallah, I can read it. Oh, there's a hand. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. By means of misfortune and pain and other motion-inducing contingencies, the other cogs of the human mission are set in motion and revolution. The mind of weakness, impotence,
and Nada, your voice is breaking.
I think the connection might not be stable, which is okay. Maybe it might be just better for me to read it. But thank you. I think you were cutting out and back in. So inshallah, unless there are any other volunteers, I'll just read right now. By means of misfortune, illness, and pain, and other motion-inducing contingencies, the other cogs of the human machine are set in motion and revolution. The mind of weakness, impotence, and poverty, inherent in human nature, is made to work. It induces in man a state whereby he seeks refuge and help not only with a single tongue, but with the tongue of each of his members. Thus, by means of those contingencies, man becomes like a moving pen comprising thousands of different pens. He inscribes the appointed course of his existence on the page of his life or the tablet in the world of similitudes. He puts forth a declaration of the divine names and becomes himself an ode to the glory of God, thus fulfilling the duties of his nature. So I know seems to be a lot going on here, but what is interesting to me is that the helplessness and the impotence and this needy position that I find myself in is, as the text kind of alludes to here, is because of these misfortunes and illnesses and pain and calamities are all means. They're not just there for me to suffer. They serve a function in reminding me my position as a recipient, that at all times, in fact, I am a recipient. But however, it doesn't just leave me there, because as we've already discussed, nobody just wants to be just needy and period, that's it. Otherwise, you know, I'll struggle. How will I know that I can meet that which I need? Do I have to fight for it? Will I be deprived of it? All of these other issues come up. So then the question that I propose is, what is the purpose in my recognition of my own neediness. What purpose does it serve? And the need, in its existence, it looks to that which can fulfill its needs. So from my perspective, it invites me to seek refuge and help in declaring my position to the one that can meet and wants to meet my needs, so that it can transform this sort of relationship that I have with the experience itself, as well as my creator, into a lovable, compassionate relationship. So in acknowledging my state of neediness through all my faculties, so like if we think about it, like, for example, I have a cat, so I'm just going to use a cat example. But when my cat is hungry or she wants something from me, she can meow. That's one way. But she'll come up to me, she'll rub her head against my leg. She'll give me really cute, like, goggly eyes. She'll walk around me. So through all her different ways of body language, all the different qualities that she has, she will make known to me that which she needs. And thereby expressing and embodying that need. And in doing so, myself, now turning to myself as a human being, then I can seek refuge with my creator for all of my needs. And thereby, as the text kind of says here, it can kind of seem elusive, like a moving pen comprising thousands of different pens, meaning that my being can become a place of manifestation for different qualities of my creator. So, for example, if I experience something that is unpreferable to me, like a calamity, like an earthquake, this experience offers as many sort of pleasures as it does pains in the fulfillment of that need. And it makes me, in inviting me to pause and reflect, it makes me become aware of the fact that I am a recipient, and that maybe, at that moment, I perhaps am not being, like, something is being taken away from me at that moment, but there are countless other things that are actually, in fact, were and still are being given to me. It kind of provides this, like, paradigm shift of, like, a new level of awareness in what is going on. And in terms of my life, I can't run away from calamities. It is through these calamities that I can discover, that I can dig into, that I can delve into the different sort of ways in which the mercy, the different qualities of my creator, the mercy, the compassion, the maker, the one who gives life manifests, training my perception as well as my ability to witness these. And it is because, like, the event of the calamity itself is so grand, and because this journey itself is so grand, it looks to the fulfillment of my duties as a human being as well. So very, very, very tightly knit and tightly tied to my kind of like a muscle of training and strengthening my ability, and, like, clearing my lenses so that I can see the mercy in my experience, the meaningful side, right? That this experience is not for nothing, but rather it looks to a sort of training for me, that it fulfills a need within me.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip this the second passage we got from the words, the Quran, the tafsir from Imam Sayyid Nursi. It was about the perception training, but because of the time, I'm jumping into the conclusion paragraph, the slides. So with this brand new perception, obviously, since we had to skip the slides, obviously that's, it was about the link with the perception, how we can change our perception when it comes to seeing the initial reaction of this is bad, this is just so bad, and there's no point, or there's no way for me to see the evidence of the most merciful one, or my creator's sufficient support. So based on the reality, based on the meaning I have been learning and taught by the prophets, all the prophetic teaching, with this brand new perception, practically speaking, the question, maybe the questions we may have is how I can rebalance my life and re-establish a sense of normalcy post-calamity. Because again, the question, so many questions, the people who have been affected very severely, depending on their degree of they get affected by the recent earthquake or other kind of calamities we may have in our personal life. The question we need to ask is, how can I really start or go back to my new routine? I don't want to go back to my old routine, but I want to start a new brand point we have landed on. The questions to trigger our inner personal journeys, as well as the experiences or different experiences, degrees of calamities, such as how does it mean to have this new perception, interpretation of calamities? And how does it play a role in my practical life right now after this recent calamity? And what is the differences between having this perception versus just whatever the initial feelings I have, and I jump into the conclusion, this is not nice, this is not good, I just don't enjoy. And can I ever go back to normal? And do I want to, if it means being unaware of the meaning in the existence of the calamity?
So we pose a lot of questions here, but I think the questions are meant to be guidelines for us to kind of, in that initial shock of experiencing that calamity, to pause and not undergo the true harm of the calamity, which would be to say that this is indeed bad, that the existence of this event is terrible and it should not have happened, that I'm making such a judgment. Because in that case, then truly it becomes harm for me. So in kind of asking these questions, and the thing is, we can't run away from calamities, right? They're not planned. They're not a part of our day-to-day plans, but they happen regardless. And there are big ones and small ones that we can kind of, inshallah, take on this brand new perception of it being a sort of training, a sort of meaningful thing that is being created for me, as a place where I can train myself to experience and witness the qualities of my creator, and to establish a living relationship with him, a living, loving relationship with him, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Jazakumullah khair, Hatice and Seyma, for this presentation. And I really wanted to highlight that these insights come from a deep place of being shaken, as far as I can tell, for both our presenters. And for me, it's important to note that, because these are not some, hypothetical, theoretical things. They were both very shaken. Many people were very shaken with the news of the recent earthquake. And actually, Seyma was one of the organizers, and Hatice Beyza was one of the presenters in an event that was done in Turkish, where a variety of people had spoken about how they were hit by the earthquake, and what to do with it. So it is coming from real helplessness and need that was experienced, and then turning to the Quran, bringing out these connections. Just very briefly, I want to say that it was very interesting for me to see you not only brought Surah Zilzal, which is really about shaking of the earth, but also the passage about the prophets being shaken. And that I hadn't noticed that they are shaken, and they are saying, when is God's support? And that intense vulnerability, as I understand from what you were saying, and being shaken is actually, that interruption is what's meant to happen. So the floor is open. We have time for comments, questions, and we of course welcome Dr. Yamina's any insights and comments that she can bring in as well. So Bismillah. I think as people are gathering their thoughts, I found the mic, so I will say one more thing. And one of the things that was shared in the program that was done in Turkish about earthquake, one of the things that was shared by, I think a psychiatrist, was that people's trust on the earth was interrupted. That we had, you know, people are saying they can't trust the earth underneath them, and that's a very significant interruption, because we take it for granted that, you know, I'm going to walk on this earth. You know, I may have some accident on the road, but like when I'm walking, you know, the earth is stable, and events like earthquakes really shake that. You know, like the earth, you can't really trust the earth on its own, and yet maybe that we shouldn't be trusting the earth anyway. It's not just about dealing with an earthquake, but it's about perhaps realizing that not only we're helpless before an earthquake, but we're actually totally helpless at all times. It's hard initially, but Hatice Beyza said it's a good thing. So we will come back to you, but there's a comment here, and Nuha is saying, I'm curious about the burdens in Surah Zalzala representing false beliefs. Is this something you can share some insight on?
I can start. Seyma, feel free to chime in at any time. I think it's addressed to us. Is that the question? Okay, inshallah. Yes, the verses, you know, I can pull back up, but you know, it says when the earth kind of takes out her burden, yields her burden. You know, in the event of a calamity, because I'm so in shock, and then I kind of pause, it makes me question really, like, what is going on here? As also the verse in Surah Qariya said as well, like what is really going on here? And in doing so, then it's inviting me to question my understanding of the event itself. So if I was perhaps, you know, I was viewing that event as, or, you know, I'll just use the earthquake as an example, but it can really be, you know, whatever is, you know, in fresh in our minds or hearts for each individual. But, you know, something that, you know, with the buildings collapsing and everything, you know, something, you know, a building, a house is something that I work for. It, like maybe people work years and years and years, and then they finally get a house and they adorn it as they want it, and then suddenly it comes crashing down on you. And then not only that, it takes your life away. So did I find a sense of security in that house that I worked so hard to kind of attain for myself? Was I putting my trust of security or safety in the material of the house itself? Did I kind of attribute a sort of quality there that is not fit for that particular thing? It can't actually sustain me, can't really protect me, it can't be my guardian, it can't really truly be a point of reference for me, kind of then collapsing back on me, which is a sort of beautiful event in the sense that because I had this building in a way that was built in my heart with a false foundation. So then it comes crashing down, and then I say, okay, let me reevaluate my perception of this, because obviously that which I thought it was going to be able to give to me is now no longer it's evidently not able to. And then it's I think a way of invitation for me to then say, okay, then what is the source? Then how can I realign myself? How can I reestablish my perspective on this so that I can use a sound foundation, pun intended, but in terms of like where my point of reference is, right? Inshallah.
Hatice Beyza, when you were referring about the adornment and the house you build and thinking that everything will be stable and this is my doing and my work, hard work, that I established this beautiful house. I was reflecting on Surah Yunus, ayah number 24, and it had similar things to say, like Allah says, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Innamal maslul hayatid dunya kama in anzalnahu minas samai فاختلط به نبات الأرض مما يأكل الناس والأنعام حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها أتاها أمرنا ليلا أو نهارا فجعلنا حصيدا كأن لم تغنى بالأمس كذلك يفصل الآيات لقوم يتفكرون. So the translation is the example of this worldly life is but like rain, which we have sent down from the sky, and that the plants of the earth absorb, those from which men and livestock eat, until when the earth has taken on its adornment and is beautified, and its people suppose that they have capability over it. There comes to it our command by night or by day, and we make it as a harvest as if it had not flourished yesterday. Thus do we explain in detail the science for a people who give thought. So subhanAllah, like this reflection of simplest things like my health or what I have created, things we start taking for granted and we start giving them names and also start believing in the means rather than going to the source. So I think that's a way of Allah showing us that come back to the source, like you were saying, So as it's just as when his amr comes, then everything is laid to barren, If we were thinking the whole city, like when see the Twitter images and all these images of Google images right now from Turkey, the areas hit, like could we have imagined that? And it was how many seconds, just within seconds this was done. So if we are taking putting our full trust in our sources and our abilities, then that's where the whole mirage is. Like we are running after something that doesn't exist because it's all in his amr kun fayakun. So if we then we just need to, that shakes our belief, and what you have presented beautifully throughout the discussion, mashallah, that it takes you back to the source and who is the real stabilizer here, who's the one who's providing. So I just wanted to share this ayah which spoke to me exactly like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like one kind of reflection back to you on that note is, as like it is a part of my nature as a human being that I do recognize things in their absences, right? When something is taken away from me, then I suddenly become aware of the lack of its presence, which then brings me awareness of the fact of when it was indeed present in my life as well. And this again invites me to a sort of consciousness of my situation, who is truly has been giving me this entire time, who is now giving me something else instead of it at this time, and what is the source, or who is that which can sustain me. So thank you for sharing your reflections.
And also, so there are a couple disciplines who mention about this, like stressful environments, stressful or stressors. Like it can be earthquake, it can be your exam, it can be your whatever person or event in your life. So usually the based on some research, all the different research in the topic of stress have shown to us people who are extremely showing stress based on specific the event they are experiencing currently, they give some sort of list that they feel stressed out. This. They say, I feel out of control. The second is unpredictability. So these two are very powerful when it comes to feeling very stressful. And the solutions, researchers who have been working with this specific topic, which is stress or stressors, the common suggestions are, it all depends on how do you respond back to this event. And also there are a couple neuroscience studies that have shown very clearly, even with the same event, people who are facing the similar event or the same event, they show different reactions, and in their brain regions, they have different activations. So, and they say, here is an evidence of we all perceive the world differently, we all respond back to stressors differently. So it's kind of very interesting when we look at Quran, the Quranic passages, prophetic teaching, they are all here for us to kind of guide us how we kind of work on our perceptions and respond to certain events. So that's one of the reasons why the shaking is prerequisite. And we have to be shaken first, because without having this feeling like I am so surprised, I am so shocked, I am shaken by this, how can I, my daughter, how can I, my son, how can I, my life partner, or did this to me, or whatever. And these initial feelings are very important, and they are serving very important purposes to kind of re-examine our previous perception. That's why it's a journey.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair, for both the comments and the interaction from the speakers. I think we also have some message in the chat from Faraz. He says, I appreciate what your presentation made me think about, which is that it is not possible to change what I feel about what I see by invoking what I don't see. Rather, I can change what I feel about what I see by seeing differently. Could you clarify that a bit? Can you talk?
I can speak to that. Actually, I feel like I understood what he said. Usually when we are facing something challenging, the traditional way of making ourselves feel better is to refer to something that we don't see. But it's not just that we don't see it, it's that we have no confirmed belief in that thing either. So it feels like this fairy tale, this thing you can't see, and you're just supposed to find comfort in it. So I think what he's saying and what you guys are presenting is that what's really going to help me is if I change what I see, the way I see it, the way I perceive it, then I'm actually going to be in a totally different state of mind. I'm going to have different feelings about it, so that I won't need this like consolation from beyond. So I'll actually have something that'll make me feel better, that'll make me feel safe, that'll give me assurance, and that won't just be empty words, or that won't just be, oh, but it's like this, or just someone else parroting whatever they think to me. But maybe I totally misunderstood him, so I don't know. That's what I got.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, we can't try to kind of have a quick fix, because being shaken is actually an invitation, as Seyma was saying, that it's an invitation to kind of open up to our emotions. We are shaken because we're terrified, we feel helpless, and embrace that because we are helpless in a very fundamental way. And we don't need a quick fix, like, I'm just worried about the earth shaking from time to time. Hopefully God won't make that happen again. That's not the fix. The fix is, Hatice Beyza was saying, that I need to shift from putting my trust, and Ziba was saying that, to putting my trust in the order itself, as if it has to happen in this way. And this beautiful verse here on the screen that Ziba mentioned, that we tend to imagine that we have mastery over it because it has been so consistent, and yet we forget that the source of this order, this predictability, is not in the thing itself. You really can't trust the earth. I mean, as we were speaking with Faraz earlier, that it's a good thing if you can't trust the earth anymore, because in itself it's another vulnerable thing. How can you trust it? But we can trust the creator of that earth.
Just one quick note on that. Thank you for both your reflection, Nurbanu, as well as your comments, Faraz. I was hoping that you'd comment so we'd hear your voice, but what your comment also made me think about is, like, the text, the guidance is also not inviting me to be stoic about it. Like, it's not saying just, whatever you feel, stop feeling it, just be neutral about it. Don't let anything, touch your heart or anything, because I already find that I'm very deeply involved into this. At the same time, it's not forcing me to kind of have this pre-assumed conclusion and just like copy paste on top of all this hurt and this pain and just say, okay, this is mercy, but I don't know how to get to that point. It's not saying that either, but rather what it's inviting me to do is saying, look, is the way that you're viewing this event truly informed? Is it truly just? Is it like the right way of viewing it? If I change my misinformed way, and it's inviting me so that I can explore this, my misinformed way of looking at it, then as that perspective changes, then my feelings, or the feelings that are created within me, also change accordingly. And I don't choose one way or another. I guess my choice is just in the way that I'm approaching it, but the feelings themselves are automatically created within me anyway. So as Brother Faraz also highlighted here, it's rather than forcing my feelings to go one way or another, just sitting with that feeling that is being created, but rather and just focusing on questioning the foundation for which I'm approaching, or the lens through which I'm looking at this event, and saying, look, is this really, like, am I making a fair judgment? I'm making a judgment call on this event as being bad or terrible or horrific, as people dying must be bad, buildings falling down, collapsing must be bad, but rather, is it really truly so?
I think a negative event, as we perceive it, is negative, but it has so many layers of people being employed and imploring Allah's beautiful names during that mishap, which we see as mishap. Like, and the ayah which you are saying, Surah Zalzala, at the end of it, it says, بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. So that's again an opportunity for people. Like, we saw so much good happening within that negative happening in earthquake, people landing so much of help pouring out from everywhere. So it's not only, if we just focus on the negative aspect, then it takes us into depression, but because we are seeing it with one lens, but Allah has so many dimensions to the same, and every person is given the opportunity to approach it and be employed by invoking his beautiful names, and to be of use in the same situations. Like, we saw so much pouring out of feelings, you can say, and people coming to help and all over the world. So I think we tend to do it one dimensional, but there are so many dimensions to a specific situation.
Thank you very much. That's also a very important point. Seyma had mentioned how everything seems to stop when you don't feel like doing anything, seeing all these images coming from the earthquake or flood zones. You don't feel like doing anything, and that is an expression of divine compassion and concern bubbling out of us. And yet there's a part also in us that wants to also continue living and continue constructing and so on. So that is also being called to manifest beautiful names of God. But the problem is we oftentimes don't see that ourselves being called to mirror something beyond us. We tend to be, at least for myself, being stuck in the little ego. And that's where the most pain comes from. Now, I wanted to also hear Dr. Yamina, if she could share anything, comment on today's discussion.
Assalamu alaikum. I mean, there were so many things that were discussed, and maybe the most important thing would be, I mean, we all know about how crisis disturbs our taken for granted routine and everything. And maybe the most important thing is that the fact that it feels bad, the fact that we are created to not like that disturbance, anything that reminds us of death, actually, of the ending of blessings. Remember Surah Al-Qari'ah, right after that, it's talking about death and after death. That's a fact. That's our reality. So at that point, it is true that when we perceive things differently, we will feel differently. But what is it that warrants that we will perceive things differently? I think the most important thing, at least to start with, would be for instance, in the case of the earth, but it could be applied to anything else. The earth starts quaking, and suddenly there is this fear, this anxiety, this sense of crisis, this sense that we can't trust anything. And so what will happen to what's happening to this earth? I can't trust it anymore. How can I live if I can't trust it? And that's where we can start, because that's definitely not true. The earth is not stable, and it is true. What is making me so anxious is the reality that this earth can quake anytime, because people want to be consoled, and you tell them, no, it just happened today. It happens, I don't know how many, once every how many years. Yeah, but tomorrow it's not the earth, it's something else. We cannot rely, the things we rely on, that little bubble that we are relying on, is all made of our own illusions about existence, about who we are and what things are. That needs to be questioned, and that's very more than discomfortable. It's like someone is cleaning a wound, a raw wound. It's very, it needs courage, and it needs persistence and sabr and resilience to stay with that wound and clean it up. Stay with those illusions that so far we don't see them. It doesn't feel like it's an illusion. It feels like it's our reality. And stay with the reality that this earth, I cannot trust it. This is the fact. And it is the fact that I don't like this, and I feel very vulnerable. And it is only then that inna rabbaka awha laha, that I may be able to confirm, to experience, and to get the good news that it is being inspired. So my relationship with the earth becomes not horizontal anymore, but vertical. It's acting on someone else's command. And that someone else is someone that I can trust, or someone that I need to learn that I can trust, because it's not that we forget. I heard we forget that it is God that is in command. We don't forget. We never have actually experienced that it is God that we need to trust. Who is God? Why should I trust him? I have not even built that relationship and I don't know him. And that's why I don't trust him. That's why I put my trust in everything else. So when that illusion is being, it's crumbled, it's like you can call it idols in another language, but in here, and we are in that crisis is real. And it either it becomes a means to wake up and to question what's going on, or it becomes a means to get deeper into running away from the reality, because it feels unbearable. So are we willing to stay with that fear, with that hurt, with that anxiety, and listen to it, and find that within that anxiety, just like the earth, we cannot trust it. My breathing, I cannot trust it. Yet it is carrying on, and I have no control over it. Just like we have no control over the earth, we don't have control over our own life. Then if we can build that relationship of trust that based on shahada, on living, witnessing, then everything starts changing. That's when, yes, our perception starts changing, and therefore everything starts changing. It's simple, but not easy. The more we choose to follow this path rather than run away from the reality, the more it will be made easier and easier, until we will find that actually it's much easier than the path where we run away. But even when we are running away, deep down we know that death is always there, and that anytime anything can happen. And this kind of big crisis only reminds us of that knowing that we know deep down. That's why we are always scared. Some people can't even send their children to play, because they say, what if something happens to the child? Even if you are supervising 24/7, if something is going to happen, it will happen, because we have no control over the child. We don't even have control over our own life. And that's when praying becomes really meaningful. Otherwise, it becomes like, I have hope, but I'm not sure. Again, belief is not a lack of denying. The fact that I don't deny God, I don't deny Akhirah, I don't deny that everything is under the control of someone who is all powerful and all compassionate. That's not denying, that's all. It does not mean that I have iman and yaqeen, certainty. I know, because I experience again and again, here and now. He is sustaining my breathing, my life right now. It means he's sustaining the life of everything right now. It means he is sustaining this earth right now. If it's not quaking, it is by his command, by his will. The more I stay with this and becomes truly my reality, then when it quakes, my question is not to the earth, but I immediately go to the one who has the, I don't speak to the car, I speak to the driver. Why are you heading that way? Inshallah. There are lots of things to share, but I think this is the most important, because this is where that's going to make the difference in which path we are going to choose, either choose consciously or by default.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much for for sharing this very important emphasis of staying with that feeling of being shaken, so that it, it will tell us it's news. يومئذ تحدث أخبارها إن شاء الله. And there's one more comment here. Faraz is saying, one more point is crisis can become the entryway to a more honest way of living, which is what Dr. Yamina is calling us.
Definitely, there is no iman without being honest. We can't deceive ourselves that we believe.
But it can also become a parallel reality, it says, so that I live two lives, one in normal times and a different one of crisis mode. Every time a new crisis raises its head, I should avoid the latter because it normalizes the crisis and domesticates it to my dishonest way of life. So yeah, coming back to what Dr. Yamina, you're saying as well, that
not everyone is very good at domesticating the crisis, and because it depends also on the magnitude of the crisis.
Yeah. But ultimately, it isn't what we're trying to do here. Is not what modern psychology is trying to do. That bring you back to your function.
Modern psychology is already based on deterministic approach.
Mm-hmm.
The environment makes you who you are. So I can't help you. I'll have to help the whole environment. It's already based on.
And the purpose of it is to bring you back to your functioning again, back to your everyday routine. And what Seyma was saying, we don't want to go back to the same routine. Something needs to change. It's just
you may go back outwardly, it looks like the same routine, but you want to come back transformed and changed and uplifted and
inshallah, yes, and that comes back to what Hatice Beyza in the comment is saying. It could be a dualistic reaction, so we don't want that dualistic reaction, this versus that, this one versus the next, routine versus no routine. It's a deeper transformation that we are being called to, and for that we have to really stay with that feeling of being reminded what we actually find very anxiety producing in our unmindful mode. We is terrified that we can't trust anything actually, but we need to stay with that so we get to the real reality of trusting the real one. Jazakumullah khair. One last comment here. Crisis is a permanent and necessary alternative to safety with God. Yeah. Otherwise, we're implicitly in crisis, even if we are continuing our routine. Okay. I guess we are going to pause here unless there are any other comments from someone new. Or questions.
So I have one more comment. Based on the presentation that Hatice Beyza and I did when we were preparing the presentation, we also talked about our very, very personal journey towards this recent earthquake in Turkey. So the thing is, when we face the initial, when we face a crisis, the calamities, our initial reaction, especially as a student of Quran, it may feel like I just wanna, I just wanna go to a mountain and only read Quran 7 days, 24 hours, and I don't wanna get in touch with anyone, anything in my life, because if I'm gonna die, eventually, what is the purpose of cooking? What's the purpose of renting my place? What is the purpose of going to school? What's the purpose of taking care of my children? This, because we cannot find any meaning anymore. If you feel like everything, if you feel like everything is not stable anymore, so what should I do? Something else. So that's why by the end of the passage that our presentation, we talked about how Imam Nursi kind of says life is kind of like a lab. I always see, like, when we read Quran or Quranic Quran tafsir and stuff, these are kind of like we are learning what we need to do as a human being. And then when we go outside, when we go to our kitchen, when we go to, our work, whatever we are being busy with, these are all lab experiments we are applying into this real life to see how I can get to know my creator in different ways. So that's why instead of just going into dualism, I just don't want to do anything else. And, if I'm going to die tomorrow, what's the point of, again, even watering my plants, because the plant is going to leave me. I think the thing is, we need to quit our previous perception when we used to do our daily routine. What was my main purpose of raising my children, going to work, cleaning my house? Why? And maybe we need to kind of re-question, re-examine our perception about our daily routine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when we are in living unconsciously, when we take faith in God for granted, then it seems like there is this world and there is the next. So I do my worldly stuff and I invest a little bit for akhirah. I fast and I pray, and we remain unaware of the connection between the two, here and now. But akhirah starts here and now, not after death. I mean, think just about confirming the existence, the reality of akhirah here and now. How do we know? If it doesn't exist for me here and now, then I think that there will be something after I die, and my fitra also wants it. But that's not iman, that's not yaqeen. Remember in Surah Al-Baqarah, when it's talking about al-muttaqeen, the God conscious, it says, وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. It's that's why Asad translated as, in their innermost, they are certain of the life to come. Why? Because there is a triple emphasis in the way it's worded. Because otherwise our heart, if there is no shahada, I mean, we can say the Quran says there is akhirah. Yeah, but if I have not confirmed it, if there is no shahada, it does not move my heart. And that's why we carry on living as though there is no akhirah. It does not involve everything that I do. Whereas, especially in the tafsir of Imam Nursi, we learn that in every single thing, our breathing, our seeing, our hearing, our eating, all are potential ibadah, worship that makes us closer to know who God is as our Rabb, and to increase our yaqeen, our certainty in akhirah, here and now. And so if we live like this, we won't have those kind of reactions. Inshallah.
I termed as dualism in today's presentation title. Jazakumullah khair. And one last comment here is Nuha saying that this reminds me of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ advises us to plant a seed even if the day of judgment is tomorrow. So because it goes beyond that binary, that dualism between this world is real and I'm going to invest a little bit in akhirah, but if this world is going, I'm not going to invest in this world anymore. That has to change, and that happens with living with awareness of akhirah now. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina, Jazakumullah khair, Seyma, and Hatice Beyza, and everyone else who commented and contributed. So next week, we are going to have our third presenters. And before we go, I wanted to remind once again the Ramadan daily check-in form. You can just save it for your own personal use as well. It has a number of affirmations that are worth some checklists about how present you were in your prayers and so on. And also there's these statements that are to help us remember, to the extent that we have confirmed, remember our connection and our reality throughout Ramadan and inshallah beyond. So I really very much encourage you. It was in today's newsletter, so I very much encourage you to go back to it and make use of this checklist of surrender, inshallah. And so we are going to, inshallah, next week have sisters Inaba and Nuha present, taking us back to reflecting on nature, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair again, and Ramadan Mubarak again, and let's keep each other in dua. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you.
Thank you, then.
Thank you so much.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. في أمان الله.